athletical, professional wrestling, I listen to the American Adversaries on AM 660, The Answer, WORL. I'd go to the mat with these guys any day.
Welcome back to the American Adversaries, ladies and gentlemen. And right before the break, Chris said we were going to define what the enemy is. Who? Before we get to that, we're going to define who a winner is, and that is whoever's going to dial 407-774-8255 and has the answer to tonight's Who Said That contest.
Thank you very much, Johnny Guns. I am Christopher Hart, and we're joined in the studio tonight by Carl Jackson, our colleague, and once again live every Saturday morning right here on AM 660, 8 a.m., and Ben Paris, who is the deputy mayor and a city councilman from the city of Longwood, is sitting in the studio. Ben, thanks again for being here.
My pleasure.
And he is the brother of Lucas Paris, who has the Periscope up and running. So you can see what his brother looks like, but you can't see what he looks like because it's a Periscope.
I've been a mystery for years.
Yes, he's going to remain a mystery.
It's like an anti-selfie stick on his head.
It is. What do you call him? Some kind of unicorn?
Yeah, he's the GoPro unicorn.
He's got the Periscope up and running, so you can go to our channel on YouTube. That is American Adversaries TV at your convenience and see what we do here. Jeff Sinnis is on the bridge, and he's like Oz. He's behind the curtain, so you can't see him, but he's working those controls. 407-774-8255 is the number, like Johnny said. Our Who Said That contest is easy. If you've never played before, we read a quote, you tell us who said it, and you win the prizes, which are a $20 gift card to Cafe Positano, only the finest Italian restaurant in all Central Florida. We'll be over there again this week, of course. And a My Liberty Threads t-shirt, MyLibertyThreads.com. They are made in America, American materials, and sewed by Americans. So that's MyLibertyThreads.com. Tonight's quote, we were going to use this last week, but I had one that I thought was more appropriate for last week, and I think this is pretty appropriate for this week, although I had another option. I will save that for later, the one that Jeff came up with. But who said this right here? The Bible is the rock on which our republic rests.
Barack Obama.
No. No. He didn't even sing it the other day.
Oh, that would have been my answer.
He is a pretty good singer, though. The Bible is the rock on which our republic rests. The Bible is the rock on which our republic rests. If you know who said that, give us a call. If you won recently, let somebody else, if you wouldn't mind, step up first. Once again, if nobody gets it, the first person to take a stab at it, at least, will be declared the winner if they get it wrong on the first stab. The Bible is the rock on which our republic rests, or perhaps used to, anyway. But this past week, there was of course, huge couple of Supreme Court decisions. Carl's got another one. We'll get to that one here shortly. But I want to kind of go back to these decisions real quickly, especially, of course, the same-sex marriage decision. As I said on the show Friday, the decision Thursday was bad, but it is theoretically at least correctable. Because with more legislative action, we can either do away with or redefine or reshape or whatever you want to call it, Obamacare. With the decision Friday, though, there's short of a constitutional amendment. There's nothing to do as far as same-sex couples having the right to marry. That's what the Supreme Court declared. As a matter of fact, the right to marry, which is a quote from the decision, is a fundamental freedom, according to Justice Kennedy. And by the way, he was a Reagan appointee because he was the compromise when Bork couldn't get through the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm sorry to say it, but Ronald Reagan should have found somebody like Bork and appointed him if they couldn't get Bork, and just keep appointing Borks. Bork the liberals. Instead, we're the ones getting borked. We've been getting borked by this Kennedy fella ever since he took the bench. He became basically a liberal in disguise, or at least a double spy, shall we say. Sometimes he's conservative, sometimes he's liberal. He was big states' rights until it came to gay marriage. Individual rights won out, according to him. He said, in his opinion, that these men and women, it would be wrong to contend that these men and women, people seeking gay marriage, disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find fulfillment for themselves. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right. Okay. What's he going to do when, like, what was it, that girl in New York who had met her father for the first time and fell in love with him, and they began to have an incestuous relationship? I wonder if Kennedy would say that people who are in incestuous relationships, that they don't disrespect the idea of marriage. Matter of fact, people who are in incestuous relationships who want to get married, why, their plea is that they do respect it. They respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. What about people with bestiality problems, okay? They don't disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. See, the same argument could be used in any person or group of people. How about a whole group of people? 20 people come up and they all want to marry each other. Why? They don't disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. You see how idiotic this decision was? It literally does open the door to anybody and everybody who comes in and says, I want to marry so-and-so or this whole group of so-and-sos. What about Muslims now who come along and say, our religion teaches that we can have multiple wives. And by the way, this to show that we do not disrespect marriage. Our plea is that we respect it so much that we just want to have as much of it as we doggone well can. You see? Yeah. When you go down the road of idiocy, you can keep going down the road of idiocy. When you turn down that street, it's hard to get off of it. Carl.
Yeah, and it destroys the true meaning of tolerance and diversity. You think about it. You have to oppress a certain... in a sense, you're trying to... Let's be honest. This is about censorship. This really is. This is about telling... this is a tyrannical or judicial anarchy. A judiciary that isn't governed by anyone. They're making law, and it's absolutely crazy. But you create this environment where you have people that are now afraid to speak out, that are now afraid to say anything, and they're in some way, shape, or form being oppressed. They're being censored. And if you think this is going to make it, look at Roe v. Wade. Look what it did when tyrants decided it rather than the people. It's just going to cause more chaos. It's going to cause more frustration within society. And the people that were hoping to find, quote-unquote, love and peace and all this kind of stuff and equality, it's not going to happen. It's going to make things worse.
Well, one thing I kind of want to bring up, there's a root to all this problem that I find very, very confusing that nobody brings up, and that's the fact that the federal government is involved in marriage in the first place. So, I mean, once we brought that in, we sort of brought this upon ourselves. This became inevitable once we allowed the federal government to be involved in marriage. This was a contract that was upheld by a church that somehow or another the federal government worked its way in, that now they upheld it and put the church right out of it. So this was kind of an inevitable end to that issue. The church let it go. So the separation of church and state was already bridged. It was already penetrated. And now we got to this level.
What you just said there, the church let it go. That was a key phrase. I'll get to that in just a minute, because that's at the heart of my argument. That's where I'm going with I'm going to identify the enemy. The Supreme Court is not supposed to be subject to the political winds, so to speak. That's why we give the Supreme Court justices, and pretty much is the only reason why we give Supreme Court justices a lifetime appointment, so that they don't have to feel like they have to appease the forces of politics. And yet, if you look at the Supreme Court decisions throughout its history, many times it mirrors the political mood of the day. Dred Scott is an example of that, and there are other examples of that. I believe this is an example of that. The Supreme Court, they read the newspapers too. They watch TV too. The public's shift on same-sex marriage is what's at the root of this. Since 2009, when 40% of the American population supported same-sex marriage until now that has increased by 50%. In other words, now 60% of the population, the general population, supports gay marriage. And if you go down, the Wall Street Journal did a poll, and they did a survey, I should say, and Every single category shows an increase in the approval for gay marriage. Liberals, small town, rural, that was the smallest increase. Retirees, ages 50 to 64, white-collar workers, professionals, Midwestern, Hispanics, suburbans, moderates, Midwestern whites, independents, women, suburban women, all ages. Every single group, the percentage of people who approve of same-sex marriage increased. And in almost every single group, it increased from being a minority of the population to being a majority of the population. The average increase was of 50% or more. So something is going on, and the Supreme Court is just kind of, if you will, sort of more or less following suit here. What is going on? Ben Paris stumbled on it. Shouldn't say stumbled on it, but hit on it. And that is that the church has given up. But not just the church. I'm going to tell you who else has kind of given up on this thing. You ain't going to like it when I tell you when we come back.